جلستنا الثانية. كرماً أرجو أخذ مقاعدكم لبدء الجلسة القادمة. طبعاً في هذه الجلسة حضورنا الكريم سنستضيف عدد من الخبراء في مجالات الأنظمة والاقتصاد ليستعرضوا معنا بعض التجارب المحلية وبعضها الآخر عالمية وإقليمية لإرساء المنافسة العادلة في العطاءات والمنافسات الحكومية. انضموا معي بالترحيب بالمشاركين والمتحدثين في هذه الجلسة: سعادة نائب الرئيس التنفيذي للشؤون القانونية بالهيئة العامة للمنافسة الأستاذ عبد العزيز بن عبيد. أستاذ عبد العزيز تفضل مشكورا. سعادة مستشار رئيس مجلس إدارة جهاز حماية المنافسة ومكافحة الاحتكار بجمهورية مصر العربية المستشار أحمد خطاب. وسعادة مدير إدارة المشتريات في مجموعة البنك الدولي إيتيل أبيبوج. Mr. Etel, welcome on stage. وأخصائية المشتريات في مجموعة البنك الدولي لينا تاتوجي. Please join us on stage and please pardon me if I misspelled or pronounced your names. Welcome ladies and gentlemen. إذا نبدأ عرضنا الأول ويقدمه مشكورا سعادة الأستاذ عبد العزيز بن عبيد. والجلسة ستكون بعنوان التواطؤ في العطاءات والعروض وأدوات مكافحة التواطؤ في نظام المنافسة في المملكة العربية السعودية. أو سننتقل إلى أن يجهز الأستاذ عبد العزيز لسعادة مستشار رئيس مجلس إدارة جهاز حماية المنافسة على العرض الذي سيقدمه إيتيل أبيبوج ولينا تاتوجي. I suppose we will start our presentations with Mr. Etel and Mr. Lina. صحيح؟ نعم؟ نعم. Mr. Etel and Mrs. Lina, please. You will be starting your presentations. Oh, Mrs. Etel. So this is the clicker, yes.
The presentation, please. Okay. Good morning, everyone. This is my great pleasure to be here with all of you today. And I want to thank the organizers for this important event talking about an important and crucial topic. As it was said, my name is Etel Bereslawski. I am the procurement manager for the MENA region, Middle East and North Africa region. I am based in Cairo. I work for the World Bank, and I oversee all the procurement undertaken in this region. So my presentation comprises two sections. The first part, I will explain the bank's procedures in our lending operations to mitigate corruption. And the second part of the session will be conducted by my colleague Lina Tutunchi, Senior Procurement Specialist, and she will talk about how the World Bank supports procurement reforms in all countries. We support procurement reform in about 60 countries all over the world, and we have also engaged in Saudi Arabia in supporting procurement reforms, but also in many other countries in the region like Egypt, Lebanon, Morocco, Tunisia, Jordan. So let me start with the presentation. I will give you an overview of the World Bank. Maybe you are not totally familiar with the World Bank, so I decided to provide an overview. So first slide, please. Is it working? I need to move, sorry. Okay, so the World Bank is headquarters is in Washington. It's a multilateral development bank. Why a multilateral development bank? Because the bank lends money and a very good financial conditions to countries to implement projects that are targeting to fight poverty and to boost economy. So this is the main objective of the World Bank. The World Bank was founded in 1944 after the Second World War, and the objective was to rebuild Europe that was totally destroyed after the Second World War. Saudi Arabia joined the World Bank in 26 August 1957, and since then Saudi Arabia has contributed substantially to the objective of the World Bank of fighting poverty. As of today, we have 189 countries that are members of the World Bank. But any country, any company from all the world can participate in the bank's finance projects, except those countries that are debarred by the United Nations Council of Security. So the World Bank has about 1,800 projects all about the world in 172 countries. The procurement portfolio, and when we talk about procurement portfolio, we talk about contracts, is about 44 billion in total at 20 billion per year. So we finance 20 billion per year in contracts, in works, infrastructure, consulting contracts, any kind of service that is needed by our countries. As I mentioned, the bank started 50 years ago, in 1944 approximately, and in 2016, the World Bank started with a substantial reform of the procurement procedures. Since the time the bank was founded, we had only one procurement guidelines, and in 2016, it was decided to renovate and to modernize the procurement procedures. So the procurement framework was launched in 2016 after 3 years of assessing, studying, analyzing different options for procurement reforms, and having consulted more than 5,000 people all over the world. As of today, the World Bank has about 250 procurement staff, and we have offices in about 60 countries. As I was mentioned, in 2016, we launched the procurement framework. And one of the objectives of the procurement framework was to mitigate corruption, to put the integrity on the top of the principles of the World Bank. So the 7 key principles of the World Bank new procurement framework are value for money. You have heard today when there was a question on whether to award the contract to the lowest price bidder or whether to use quality when you assess a bid. And value for money targeted that decision. Value for money is not only considering the price, but also the quality, also the maintenance, also the low cost of what you are buying. This value for money principle is a new one. It was not before in the procurement guidelines. Before, the banks awarded or suggested or enforced the borrowers to award the contract to the lowest value bid. So price was the key requirement. But with the new introduction of the procurement framework, quality becomes also a very important aspect. Economy, integrity, fit for purpose, efficiency, transparency, and fairness. These are the 7 key principles that are always present in many international procurement regulations in many countries. But as the modern law, UNCITRAL also includes these 7 principles. So which is the role of the World Bank in all this context on corruption, on procurement? So as I mentioned, the World Bank lends money to countries to implement projects and are the borrowers who has the responsibility to implement projects, who have the responsibility to conduct procurement. So we rely on the borrowers to conduct procurement. But before lending money, the procurement team assesses the capacity of the borrowers to conduct procurement. We need to ensure that the borrowers have the necessary resources, knowledge, capacity, qualifications to conduct procurement. If this is not happening, mitigation measures has to be implemented, put in place in each project. But apart from the borrower to implement projects, how we can ensure that transparency, fairness, economy, efficiency are applied in any single procurement process. For that, the bank conducts post and prior reviews. It is based on a risk-based assessment. For large value contracts, the banks review all the steps of the procurement process, from the reviewing of the bidding document, the invitation for business and the invitation for bids, the contract award recommendation, and we have the different levels of approval. That levels depends on the value of the contract. For high value contracts, we have an operational committee, procurement committee in Washington that takes decisions on value contracts. For small value contracts, we conduct post-review. After the borrowers conducts the procurement, we assess on post-facto basis the procurement processes. And if we find any deviation from the procurement regulations, we might declare misprocurement. And misprocurement means that the borrower has to return the money of the contract to the bank. The bank has 0 tolerance for corruption. When something is wrong, we cannot finance any contract that has not been aligned with the procurement regulations. We have also relied on auditors, as was mentioned today. Auditors can also and should also audit banks' finance projects, and we follow and assess the recommendations of the audit reports. And we have third-party assurance in countries like Yemen or Iraq, where the bank cannot operate freely. We rely the audits of the banks in third-party monitorings. And under the new procurement framework, we can also help countries to conduct procurement. We do the procurement hands by hands with the borrower. And which are the key features of the procurement framework? That I think this is one of the objectives of these presentations. As I said, value for money is one of the core principles. We can also rely on the borrower's procedures, if the borrower's procedures are assessed as acceptable. And we involve more and more in contract management. We know that corruption is not only and most often in the procurement process, but mostly in the implementation of the contract. And this is where our eyes should go also, not only up to the contract award moment. Contract management is a very difficult area in which corruption is present more often. To ensure, transparency, we talk about competition today in the first session. Of course, competition, why is important? because when more competition is, more open and transparent is the process. We have conducted study in Brazil, and we saw that when more than 6 bidders participate in the bidding process, prices are reduced substantially. So that's why transparency is of key importance to save money for the governments, but also to ensure a fair process. And for that, we have the mandatory requirement that all advertisements for participating in banks' finance projects should be advertised in the United Nations Development Business Portal. And we have also, with the new procurement framework, established a new software, a software called STEP, that is called System for Tracking Expenditures in Procurement. All transactions financed by the World Bank are registered in STEP. All contract awards financed by the World Bank are advertised and registered in STEP. Borrowers, procurement staff, everyone has to process all the procurement transactions through STEP. And this brings transparency. Also complaints from bidders should also be registered in STEP. And most important is that the World Bank has a very strict measures on anti-corruption. All our contracts should include anti-corruption provisions. Everyone, bidders, borrowers, should abide by the anti-corruption provisions. And the bank has the right to audit the accounts of the contractor or the consultant or the supplier that has been involved in the contract financed by the World Bank. So these are the 5 key principles of corruption. And when a bidder has failed into any of these situations, the bidder is investigated and the bidder can be debarred by the Integrity Department. We talk about collusion today. There were a lot of questions about collusion, and this is the most difficult behavior that can be identified. But anyway, I don't think to explain any of these. These are self-explanatory, and you can see that every bidder that is found under any of these corruption practice can be debarred by the World Bank. And the debarred list is totally public. You can go to the website and you can see all the companies that have been debarred and are precluded for participating in banks project. So to finalize my presentation, I just want to mention that we have an integrity department called I&T. The Integrity Department is a completely separate department for procurement. Procurement staff do not conduct investigations. Procurement staff report any issue to the Integrity Department. Anyone, any citizen can go and report any misbehavior to the Integrity Department. The Integrity Department is completely independent. It reports directly to the President of the World Bank. So, let me see if I miss anything important. Okay, so any departed bidder is precluded for participating in the World Bank Finance Project. So with that, I just want to give you an overview of how the bank mitigates corruption in our bank finance project through misprocurement to borrowers to return the money that has been used, and debarment, contractors, bidders, and suppliers that are involved in corruption behaviors. So with that, I will give the floor to my colleague, Lina Tutunchi. She's going to talk about this important topic of how the World Bank supports procurement reforms in our borrowers' countries. Thank you.